Good morning. My name is Chandler Green, and the title of my research project is Sustaining the Land of Fire and Ice. And it takes place in Iceland, which is affectionately called the Land of Fire and Ice by the people who live there. They use this term to describe the harmonic mix of volcanoes and glaciers, which form their island nation. Now, my research was on global warming. Please allow me to share my results. Yes, global warming is real, but more on this later. Today, I'm going to be giving a three-part presentation. First, I'm going to talk about student research. Then, I'm going to talk about my own research. And finally, I'm going to talk about the results of my research. So first, I want to get into student research. But before I begin with this topic, I want you all to look at this photo and to tell me what you see. Just yell out anything.
Valley, road, and
Mountains.
A road.
Yes. This is a picture of a road between two cliffs, but these aren't ordinary cliffs. One of these cliffs is a part of the North American plate, and the other cliff is a part of the Eurasian plate. This is a site in southwestern Iceland where you can actually walk between two spreading tectonic plates, because Iceland lies on the mid-Atlantic ridge. Now, my purpose in showing you this photo isn't just to give you a geology lesson. I'm also showing you this photo because I think it's representative of the entire left brain and right brain myth. Now, the left brain and right brain concept may not be considered a scientifically accurate representation as to how the brain works, but it is still a way that many approach research. This hypothesis presupposes that left brain people think analytically and logically, while right brain people are more artistic and expressive. So consequently, many divide research in the arts and sciences according to this theory. On the left brain side, we have the sciences and the math, and on the right brain side, we have art, film, music, etc. Well, it is my belief that research was introduced, approached, and executed using more creative forms of expression, more students would fall in love with being curious. And this would inspire more students to get involved with research because creative forms of communication kind of lessen that intimidation factor. So lessening this fear factor in research and increasing communication are absolutely crucial because for many students, science is intimidating. They look at a graph like this and they really don't understand what's going on. And unfortunately, this scares away many students from science, and it defeats the purpose in research. Because the purpose of research in science is to gain knowledge and to share that knowledge. But often, as we see, the information from scientists isn't readily comprehensible by everyone. This is where right brain strategies of research can take this language and translate it into a form that is understandable by everyone. Because obviously, this is a graph about Pitbull. But actually, this graph is about global warming. So if we, that is me and you, can get more students to explore science topics by appealing to their creative sides, they're not only going to learn these analytical and critical thinking skills for themselves, they're going to improve the understanding of science information for everyone. So why am I even talking about this? Well, I think that my research experience can help students and teachers bridge this gap between the left brain and the right brain. Which leads me into part 2 of my talk, which is about my research journey. My research journey began last year when my friend Caitlin and I were accepted to go on a Maymester to Iceland. And we knew prior to the trip that we wanted to film some type of documentary because we both had an interest in film. However, before we could grab our camera and get started shooting, we needed to find a topic for our film. So naturally, Caitlin and I went to the one place where all great scholars go to find this inspiration. We went to Google. But it was from our internet searches that we found Iceland is very much a green country. We found that Iceland is about 80% reliant on clean energy, which is pretty remarkable because the United States is only about 7%. So Caitlin and I decided that we would make this the focus of our documentary. We would compare Iceland's perspective on the environment with the United States', and we would do this by interviewing University of Iceland students and comparing their views with students at our own university. So we went off to Iceland and everything was just perfect like we imagined it. Wrong. As it turns out, we couldn't accomplish this grand plan because the University of Iceland students were in final exams. So we only got to interview 2 of them. And on top of that, the ones that we did interview didn't think that Iceland had a unique perspective. So, yeah, we freaked out. We were in the middle of our Iceland Maymester. We got this grant money to film this amazing documentary, but nothing was going according to plan. But we realized where we really went wrong was the way in which we approached our research. Caitlin and I thought since we were making a film that we were restricted to this right brain side of the cliff, but in reality, we were closer to science than we realized. In fact, we were carrying out the scientific method and we didn't even know it. Because in the scientific method, you can have a hypothesis, but you won't know your results until you carry out your experiment. So Caitlin and I had to eliminate this divide between the left brain and the right brain and accept that what we were doing was more like an experiment. So in our new approach to the documentary, we went out and we began collecting as much data on Iceland as we could. And we did this by interviewing representatives from the United Nations University Geothermal Training Program and the Land Restoration Program, as well as our tour guides and those 2 University of Iceland students. We also filmed geothermal plants, waterfalls, glaciers, and coastlines. And it was from all of this data collection that something amazing happened. By opening our minds to the science, Caitlin and I began gaining knowledge on major environmental issues of our time. These are big issues like clean energy and global warming that we've seen before on the news, except now we were learning about them firsthand in Iceland. In essence, Caitlin and I were just like scientists, except our laboratory was the country of Iceland, our beakers and our test tubes were a camera and a tripod. Instead of outlining our results in a paper, we portrayed them through video. Our research project wasn't entirely left brain, nor was it entirely right brain. Instead, we used right brain strategies to tackle a left brain topic. And by using this creative and visual format of film, we can interpret environmental science topics for viewers without science backgrounds. So in other words, we used art to communicate science. Now, the results of our experiment in Iceland cover a range of environmental issues spanning from clean energy all the way to the effects of climate change on Iceland's environment, because Iceland truly is a living laboratory for all of these issues. The first major topic that we investigated was geothermal energy. And as I mentioned before, Iceland lies on this mid-Atlantic ridge, which is where these 2 tectonic plates are spreading. And it's their position on this divergent boundary that gives them easy access to the heat within the Earth. That is what powers geothermal energy and actually satisfies 2/3 of all of their energy demands. Furthermore, we learned that Iceland has such expertise in geothermal energy that they actually host the United Nations University Geothermal Training Program. And what the UNU GTP does is it trains students from around the world that are in these developing countries that have geothermal potential. So these are countries like Kenya, Indonesia, the Philippines, as well as places in South America. They're coming from all over the world, and they're going to Iceland to learn about geothermal energy. While we were visiting the UNU GTP, we not only got to interview the director of the program, we also got to interview a PhD student from Kenya. And this was really cool because we got to hear from her about how studying in Iceland is going to help her develop geothermal in her home country of Kenya. Something that we didn't realize is that clean energy in Iceland is still far from perfect. In fact, clean energy, like geothermal energy, still affects the environment in 2 major ways. One, just through land use, because building a plant is going to destroy some nature that is there. And 2, the emissions in geothermal still contain some carbon dioxide and the gas hydrogen sulfide, and these aren't great for the environment. But the UNU GTP is finding ways to improve these things. Ironically, a country that is using so much clean energy is also experiencing very visible effects of climate change. In fact, one of the most shocking things that we captured on film was our trip to Iceland's 4th largest glacier, which I am not even going to try to pronounce that name. But This is one of our last excursions on the trip, so Caitlin and I were really, really looking forward to this. But when we got to the location and we got off our bus, we didn't see a glacier at first. Instead, all we saw was this barren, rocky landscape that kind of looked like the surface of the moon. So Caitlin and I are thinking, where is this glacier we were promised? Like, we've been looking forward to this. And we asked our tour guide, and she pointed the glacier out way into the distance. And as it turns out, this land that we were standing on was where the glacier once resided. And it was so far out into the distance because it's been melting over 100 meters every year. Now, 100 meters is about 328 feet, so that's almost the length of an American football field. That right there is how much ice this glacier is losing every year. Filming that truly opened my eyes to the effects of climate change. These, of course, are only a few of the main topics that our documentary covers, and I'll be passing out a handout after this, and it'll tell you how you can look up our documentary online. So I encourage you all to do that. Ultimately, all of our research, our interviews, and our film showed us that Iceland is the ideal model to follow when it comes to approaching these global environmental concerns. They're utilizing clean energy, they're spreading that education to others around the world, and their environment is displaying the effects of climate change. Our generation will face these challenges moving forward, so it's important that we learn as much about them as we can. And that is why we should study Iceland, because they're a living laboratory for all of these issues. My results beyond Iceland and my hope with this presentation today is to change our approach to research. If we can change our approach, we can get more students to explore science by appealing to their creative sides. But I suppose the real question is, why did I make a Microsoft PowerPoint when I could have just shown you my documentary? Well, I chose not to show the documentary because it's available online 24/7. And for me, the real impacts of my research have occurred after Iceland. I'm an environmental science major, minoring in media arts. So before my research experience, I saw myself falling off a cliff between the left brain and the right brain because I didn't think a place for me existed in research. But now I see myself standing on this really cool Photoshop bridge between art and science, and I want more people to join me. Therefore, I don't want you to leave this presentation with just a bunch of random facts about Iceland. I want you to leave this presentation with ideas of how you can build your own bridge in research and generate your own positive feedback. Oh, and yeah, global warming is real, and it is a danger. And before I completely wrap up this presentation, I want to make some acknowledgments. First to my research partner, Caitlin Gilbert, to our amazing documentary mentor, Laura Kissel, to Jeannie Weingarth, who's helped me so much with this presentation, as well as to the Office of Undergraduate Research and the Capstone Scholars Program for giving us these amazing opportunities. And again, thank you all for being here.